This is the first of a series of videos that I'm going to produce for you to help you with your final project. You're going to start the final project based on your foundation assignment that you did, where you came up with your own foundation solution to the house that had the garage and the front porch. Everybody kind of came up with their own solution there, so yours may be different than somebody who's sitting next to you. The house that we started off with is the same house that we're looking at here, which was called the Josephine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the Josephine footprint, original footprint dimensions, and just kind of give you some guidance on how to get started on the project. So I have a 28 by 30 house that I'm going to get the footprint started on. This other videos that I choose to do will be based on things that we haven't really had a chance to cover, like maybe if you wanted to create basement stairs and things like that, and then producing sections and elevations and annotated details will all come as little excerpts that will help you along with this project. So the first thing you're going to want to do is do the same thing that we did to start the Revit camp. We want to start a new project. So you want to make sure you're hitting new here and not open. And you want to open or start with the new template that is in the R drive under AED 165, assignments and handouts, the same one that was in the Revit camp. We're going to start with. And then hit OK. Alright, that took a few seconds to load. And we're in the same first floor plan that we started off with in the Revit project. Now this is going to become your final project, and so it's going to need a little bit more room. So I'm going to take what was the crop region, remember, from your first floor plan, and just expand it a little bit so we have enough room for our larger project. Especially those of you who are going to have a garage attached, you want to make sure you have enough room to put all of that in there. We're going to start with walls and go to our 2x6 exterior partition walls. Remember that you've got to build those walls going in a counterclockwise direction, so I'm going to go at about 28 feet by 30 feet. Just kind of eyeball that a little bit and close that. And then we can adjust those more precisely by using the dimensions and having those dimensions snap to the exterior face of stud. This wall here is the one that's highlighted, so that's the one that will move. So 28 feet. And I'll pick the top wall here and make adjustments to where the dimensions are referencing and make that a nice even 30 feet. Now we can pin the walls just like we did. And if we want to just make sure that things did come in correctly, I'm going to do the align dimension from outside face of stud to outside face of stud and just verify that that says 28 feet, and do one from outside face of stud to outside face of stud and verify that that's 30 feet. And then we can get rid of our dimensions. So now we are sure that we've pinned them and they actually are where we want them to be. Okay, those walls should be constrained to the roof. So we'll go to top constraints and set that to roof level. Now, one of the things that we did is in the when we talked about wall sections is we came up with wall heights based on stacking our rough opening dimensions for our door and our header that we needed and our top plate. You're going to do a similar thing with this, where you're going to set your wall dimensions for that roof level. I'm going to switch to an elevation view by double clicking on it here. Now notice that I have a dimension set for 10 feet for my roof level. That's an inaccurate dimension. If we wanted to set this to a more realistic dimension height, we might set this to something like 8 feet 0 3/4 of an inch. You should recognize that as being equal to the 2x8 door, which is 6 foot 10.5 inches rough opening, plus a 2x12 header, which is 11 1/4, plus the double top plate. If you add up those dimensions, 6 foot 10.5, 11 1/4, and 3 inches, you end up with exactly 8 feet 0 3/4 inches. So that's one approach. Remember, we can design that wall based on stacking those elements. The other approach is you can click on this wall and you can say, I want this wall to be actually exactly 9 feet. That can be done. Well, when you make that decision, recognize that when we cut the section for this, you need to make sure that you design or place the detail elements into that section accordingly. Okay? All right, so that was just an aside. So let's go to our first one. Notice that that wall, because we attached it to that roof line, consistently changed with whatever we put in here for height. Okay? Let's go back to the first floor. All right, let's flip to a 3D view. So what we have here is we have our walls defined, but I also want to define a floor area. We're not going to bother with the foundation, except for we may add the foundation just to make the section look more realistic, but remember that you already all did the foundation and the framing and all that. So what we add here is just to get the model to a point where we can use it for our sections. So I'm going to switch back to our first floor. And I'm going to create a floor based on the footprint or the walls that I have already laid out for the footprint of my building. So those are going to be the walls. And I want this floor not to be a generic 12-inch floor, but I want to pick a floor size that matches what can be used based on the dimensions that I have. So I have a 28 by 30 foot house, so I would want to take the 28 and decide how I want to span my joists. I think I want to span it so I've got 16 feet on one side and then I have the remaining 12 feet on the other. So that means I'm doing a 16-foot span, so I will most likely need wood truss joists at 12 inches on center with a carpet finish is one of my choices. But what if I wanted wood finish? Notice I don't have a 12-inch stud size here. So I could start off with my wood finish, edit the type, duplicate it, and put in wood joists at 2 by 12. And then in my structure here, I'm going to edit that structure so that my wood structure here, instead of being 9 1/4, is 11 1/4. And that updates my floor system so that it matches my 2 by 12 studs, joists rather, with 3/4 of an inch sheathing. You have sheathing here, and you have 3/4 of an inch finished floor. So that makes up the floor plate, it's called. Okay, so I can check that off and say I accept that, and we can take a look at that in 3D. And you can see we have the walls, and then we can see the outside edge of the floors, which isn't realistic, because what actually happens is this floor is built, then the walls are built with their framing, and then the siding and the sheathing cover all the way down to where the foundation wall is. So I'm going to now show you how to edit your walls so that you end up getting them to cover your floor area like they're supposed to. Select any one of your wall types and go into Edit Type. Now we're going to keep this wall type the same name. We're not going to change the name of it or duplicate it. But what I do want to do is edit the structure within the wall. So one of the things we haven't had a chance to do yet is we haven't made a new wall type. So this wall type that we have, which is the exterior siding on 2 by 6 stud, has an inside finish of gypsum wallboard at 1/2 inch. Notice that we have core boundary and core boundary. So this tells us where the actual structure is. So the structure is the 2 by 6 or 5.5 inch stud. And then on the outside we have a substrate wood sheathing of 1/2 inch, and then we have a finish of siding, clapboard siding, 3/4 inch. So this shows us the wall structure by listing them from inside to outside. And you can see it says interior side, exterior side. What I want to do is see the preview of that wall. We can see there's the inside gyp, the core structure, the sheathing, and the siding. But I want to change this to a section view. So we're looking at it in plan right now, and I'm going to switch to a section view. And I want to scroll in to the bottom of the wall and make sure that the two materials that we have here on the outside are unlocked. And the way to do that is we need to be able to modify. So notice that modify button is turned on now. I want to modify the edges of these outer boundaries. So see, when you put your cursor over the sections of this wall, they each have their own little section. So there's the sheathing section. I want to unlock it. And the outer boundary, which is the clapboard siding, I want to unlock it. Both the stud and the gypsum wallboard should remain locked. Okay? And then hit OK. Now, what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to take that wall and extend both the sheathing and the siding down while keeping the stud wall remaining on the surface of the floor. So I want to set up a base offset. Now the base offset should be equal to the thickness of the floor plate, which would be 11 1/4 inches plus 3/4 of an inch sheathing. So that would be -12 inches. And then we can see from the side that we have. All right, so see what happened here is we have the wall. It looks like it just kind of extended down all the way over the floor, but it actually did a little bit more than that. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. We actually changed the wrong thing. It shouldn't be base offset. Let's set that to 0. I actually changed the wrong thing. It should be base extension. So that should go to -12 inches. All right. So there, that's what we ought to see. So see that little sliver in the front of the sheathing and the siding extended down over the floor. So now we just want that to match for the rest of the wall. So I'm going to select all the walls, and I'm going to set that same base extension to -12. And oh, you see how Revit assumes when you put in -12 without inches, it's -12 feet. So let's change that to 12 inches. And now we have a floor system within our model that's going to be an accurate description of how the walls and the floors are connected. And just to prove that to you, let me go to the first floor view, and we're going to create a section view. It's really easy to create a section view. You click on the section tab, and then you decide where you want the section to go. So I'm going to put the section right through the middle of the building like that, and then you can define whether or not you want to cut the section in this direction or that direction. So when you click on it, you can flip views. Let me see if it modify. You flip the, oh, I'm sorry, you got to drag it to the one direction or the other. So this flips the view here. I was pushing the wrong button. But let's see what this section looks like, because it doesn't make any difference which direction we look at this in right now because of the way that we don't have anything in here. But if you double click on the section tab, then it shows you what we're looking at. And most likely this is going to print at 1/2 inch equals a foot scale, somewhere like that. So we put that at 1/2 inch foot scale, and we also say that I want to see a higher detail level of medium. Now I can tell where my sheathing and siding and how it rests on my floor, and we would have to make some corrections. So because, for instance, notice the wall is resting directly on the finished floor. It should be resting on the subfloor. And then also there should be a kind of a clean connection between these two. So if I click on the wall and I choose to join it with my floor, let's make sure it's joined with the floor. There we go. That's a correct situation right there, where the wall goes down to the subfloor, and you see how my finished floor got cut by the wall. Okay, so we do that over here on this side as well. We join, so you have to highlight something and join those two elements together. All right, we'd keep doing that all the way around. Actually, if we cut a section in the opposite direction, we'd do the same thing. Now what this is going to allow us to be able to do is I'm going to be able to start placing detail components in here that will populate this wall. So just to give you an idea of how we do that, if we go into annotate and I add a detail component, I want to add in particular detail components from my detail items. You see the detail items has a subfolder system, and in particular I want wooden plastics. I would like to go into wood framing, and I want nominal cut section lumber. And from this list I can pick the ones that I think I'm going to use the most. I'm certainly going to use strapping. I'm going to use maybe 1x8 for fascia board, something like that in the future. I need a 2x6, 2x4. Certainly going to need a 2x10 and a 2x12. And then when you hit OK, we can now grab those items from over here. I want a 2x6, and I need to place it inside here to represent my shoe plate. So there's the 2x6 to represent the shoe plate. And then up at the top, I would put in my 2x6 double top plate. I'm going to take advantage of being able to snap to these points. Whoop. And then below that, I might have my 2x12 header. But remember, I used a 9-foot ceiling, so I'm going to have a 2x12 header here and here. But then I'd have cripples in between those two things. I'd have cripples, so I'd pull those down the distance that they need to go for it to match my door. So that's going to be a lot easier for me to do once I have my door in section. But this kind of gives you an idea of how when we cut a section, it doesn't show you any of the components that are in the wall. We're going to have to actually build them. Okay? So what this does is this sets you up so that you have the walls and the floors married together properly, and that's doing this right is going to be important to make sure the rest of the project goes well as well. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the next video. Whatever you need help on, you can open it.